ได้ยิน
the
ค่ะ
21st of
ได้ยินครับ
March
อาจารย์ได้ยินใช่ไหม
2020.
ครับ
ได้ยินค่ะ
Translated into
ปิดเลย
English by
ครับ
Rodrigo
เดี๋ยวให้
Aldana,
อาจารย์ลองฟังเสียงใน
assisted
ห้อง
by
ครับ
Trin,
ว่า
ค่ะ
John Petra, and
สวัสดี
Marshall
ค่ะท่าน
and
อาจารย์
Asita
ค่ะ
Gill.
ค่ะคุณแอน
Ajahn
ค่ะ
Sujin,
สวัสดีค่ะ
both in Thailand and around the
สวัสดีครับ
world,
ท่านอาจารย์
there is huge
ค่ะ
anxiety
สวัส
and
ดีค่ะ
dread about COVID-19.
สวัสดี
We
ค่ะ
don't know what is
สวัส
happening
ดี
or
ค่ะ
what will lead
สวัสดีค่ะ
to
อา
a
จารย์
mild illness
สวัสดี
or
ครับ
very
อาจารย์
serious and result in death. There have been a
ผม
number
ว่า
of
คงไม่ควรนะเอา
cases of
วิดีโอมัน
COVID-19
ขึ้น
in southern Thailand, why people worry about encountering the illness when they come here from other areas of the country. Crime, accidents, and illness are dangers that surround us
Would you
all the
like to
time.
begin now?
Now, in
You
the
can
midst
begin
of
now,
current
that's
fears
fine.
about COVID-19,
Yes, please.
how are we to consider what is happening from the Buddhist
Just a
perspective?
couple of minutes until the time, so maybe we just give it a minute or two, or we can start if anyone has. Nina, have you got something you'd like to start with?
Well, I can, yes. You know, I find that Ajahn often says about understanding, it arises suddenly, unexpectedly. He often repeats it, and I find it, you don't hear me? Yeah, I find it a very good reminder because you never know the next moment. And Sarah says this her example of the food too, that we can make beautiful plans, but we don't know the outcome because that depends on conditions. And I find this so consoling because I had some very difficult time with the heat wave and no helper coming and all the washing and so on. But then that is a situation. And then we go back to the Paramatta Dhammas, the momentary. And as Sarah reminded me, we never know the next moment what seeing will see or what body consciousness will experience. It may be very painful. So this is all very helpful to me, all these reminders.
So, what is the best thing at that very moment?
Excuse me, I didn't get it. What?
Yeah. And what is the best thing in that moment?
Of course, to be aware, but that depends too on conditions.
We just learned that they are all dhammas, but the truth of it does not appear. It just appears as the object of a moment of experiences it.
So we forget that, and then we are absorbed in the story of our life.
So it means that even that moment is not self, nothing that can be done at all. Just remember that all realities are conditioned at that very moment, just for that very moment, and then on to understand that that is not permanent at all. It's so very helpful. Not permanent, no matter it looks like it's permanent, but in reality it's not at all. That's why it cannot be taken for anything permanent to be I or something. Just understanding is the best thing. Nothing to do, just understand. Depending on how much understanding is there, or just very little, it doesn't matter at all because it's a self. This is just right the reminder to understand each moment as not self. Even right now, see? But that cannot be known as it is yet. It takes time for Sankarakanda to develop little by little, that actually what is seen is just right now as nothing there. Nothing there. Only that which is seen is the truth of that reality which appears. Whatever is now appearing is the truth of that reality, its own nature. No one can change, no one can do at all, because actually nothing is I. or thing. Only this just gradually develop little by little. Only a moment of thinking about the truth of it. We don't have to say that it's the truth, but we learned from considering Dhamma cannot be anything else. It has to be as it is just right now. But Panya, right understanding, is not enough to let go the idea which clings to that and take it for something or all the time. That it's a truth to be known. As Panya does not grow enough to know better than this, it is now developing little by little by Sankharakhanda. No self, no one at any moment at all. Just learn to understand about the teachings of the Buddha about Dhamma or Dhammas are anatta. Not just the word, but it is right now. To understand that no one makes it to arise at all, but it's there. And the arising and falling away is not known yet. But the truth is that what is in now is not just a moment ago. And the experiencing just a moment ago is now. It's the one which now experiences. It's gone so very rapidly. That's why no self, no I. Just for a short time or long time, depending on how many moments arising and falling away. And looks that it's there all the time. But in reality, in order to have less clinging, nothing at all, because what appears now is gone all the time. The kanika marana is the truth of everything which is conditioned to arise, has to fall away. It's impossible to directly experience just from understanding few words of the teachings, but to hear it again as reminder and understand the truth is the truth. Nothing more than just no one, no self, only different realities appearing from time to time, depending on understanding whether there is attention or awareness of the characteristic which appears. For example, right now, there is hardness. Hardness cannot be smell or taste or anything else, no matter when and where. When it is experienced, it's hard. That's all, but different moment, different ones. So very rapidly. And the truth is covered up by ignorance. Just take it for something as soon as it's there. Even not knowing what is that yet, but there is clinging as soon as something there, like the 5 dot senses experience, there is the attachment and ignorance at moment of jhana, after seeing, 3 moments after seeing. So very rapidly. That's why we know how much panya of the Buddha is all the time. Understanding whatever is there is the way to understand the Buddha's wisdom, his virtues. So great. Can this be known or experienced? It's now. Can it is experienced as it is, as no one? It takes time, because thinking about how long the ignorance and attachment to the idea of self has been there from moment to moment as something, even it's not anything, but it's something. Just doubt, what is that? Because it is something. Ignorance of that as just that which arises and appears and falls away, never to be found again. All gone. Is that right? Is that true? So the
Yes, it's
parami of
very
sattva,
true.
Is it?
So true. And like Nina said, we spend a lot of time thinking about difficult situations, like when she needs help with her washing or heat waves or foot or this or that, and just forget completely that actually it's just seeing now, hearing now, thinking now. And the difficulty is actually not the washing or the foot, but the clinging and the dose at this very moment. But it passes instantly and then is gone, not my dosa or my clinging. And at a moment of seeing, no difficulty. At a moment of kindness, no difficulty. So the difficulty is not the situation, but just the moments of akusala that arise and pass instantly. So it's just difficulty for an instant and then gone. Like now, where is the difficulty?
And
I find your words very consoling, Sarah. I'm very happy to hear them.
And although it's useful to hear reminders about the unexpected nature of our daily life and how things happen by conditions, this is not yet the teaching of the Buddha, because that is also at a conventional level. This impermanent, we're talking about their impermanence, or at a conventional level, not the impermanence of conditioned realities. So it's only the reminders about the true nature of the present moment realities that are the most useful reminders, because they are what is unique to the Buddha's teaching.
I have a question arising out of last week's discussion about the inner and outer. Is that the word for it? Jitta is the innermost real jitta, and the sense bases, and the Jetasikas are the outer realities. And when, for instance, in the jhana process, we think banya could arise, then kusala or akusala, and we think of that as a kusala jitta or akusala jitta, and it's the kusala or the akusala which determine what we call it, and the akusala we read about taints the jitta. I actually, when I think about kusala and akusala jittas, I don't think about the function of jitta there at all. I just focus on what I realize is the in the case of akusala, which arises most often, that's what makes the jitta akusala. But what is the function of the jitta itself in that process, the jhana process?
Would you like just to call it kusala or akusala?
Sure, I'm fine with that.
See, if there is not yet the understanding of that which experiences is not sound, how can there be the exact understanding of the reality right now as kusala or akusala? It's only thinking about the word kusala or akusala.
Yeah.
And the thinking is also that which can experience, see? So
I'm sorry,
in the beginning, how can one know whether it is kusala or akusala without understanding the reality which experiences an object? So in the beginning, one knows that now there are realities, but we just talk about the character and the story of realities, while reality arises and falls away in second. But to know that it's real because it's now, but not understanding the truth of it as not sound, that is only the idea about what it is, whether it is kusala or akusala. It's only the word, while the characteristic which experiences is not yet realizes. So it's only like dreaming or thinking about the words or time.
That's true. Yes, that's true for sure. And yet, I guess there's the attachment to wanting to understand theoretically or intellectually what I have a sense of what akusala citta is, that is citta accompanied by ignorance and attachment or dosa. And I sense the dosa and the attachment and the ignorance are jetasikas. But since talking about the inner realities and the outer realities, I suddenly thought, well, I really don't have any idea about the citta. When I talk about akusala citta, I know it cannot arise without jetasikas, and yet it's the function. Like, for instance, when there's seeing, the function of it's the citta sees and is accompanied by the various jetasikas. And I'm thinking about, well, in the Javana process, the jetasikas seem to determine the nature of the citta, but there's no citta seeing at that point. Because
I think what you're asking is, what is the function of the citta at those moments, the jhana?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
These are the moments that think about the object that's been seen by seeing consciousness. So these are the moments that form up the concept of a person or a thing, or identify the visible or the audible object, or that understand the meaning of the words spoken. That is the process, or think about the sound that's been experienced by the ear consciousness. So we do think about you. I mean, when you say you think about just the akusala and not the citta, just the mental factors rather than the citta, I think in other contexts, because we talk about the way things, objects that are experienced through the sense doors are processed or thought about.
Yes.
And forming up concepts. So that these are the cittas that do that. The cittas in the Javana process.
The like, for instance, for thinking, I've understood that it's the vitaka, the jetasika vitaka that touches the object. Is that so that citta can think? I've always thought it's the vitaka that thinks.
I think the term thinking is used in different contexts. So when it's used to refer to vitaka, cetasika, it's a different meaning than what we mean when we talk about the citta thinking about the object that's been experienced in sense.
The words we use, and no matter whether we're talking about seeing or the kusala citta or akusala citta or any other citta, it's always the leader in experiencing.
Yes, yeah,
in that sense, it's always the innermost, because it's always the leader at that moment of experiencing, and it has the function of experiencing the object, and it is affected, it's tainted by akusala cittas, and it's conditioned by kusala cittas when it arises, but the citta itself is the one that is pandra or clear, and is just the leader in experiencing the object.
And it experiences the object in particular ways because of the jetasikas that arise with it.
Exactly. So
right?
When it arises with lobha, it experiences the object rooted in that lobha, it's tainted by the lobha, and it experiences that object differently from when it's accompanied by panya, for example. But it's always the leader, and in that sense, it's always innermost. And if it weren't for those akusala cetasikas arising with it, it would be pure. So it's pure until it's tainted at that moment.
Right. Yes.
And just one other comment, when you mentioned at the beginning about the dhammas which were innermost, So you mentioned the citas, and you mentioned the sense, and then you mentioned,
Because
you
it's
said sense
space.
spaces are external or are outer, but they're also inner.
That's what I understood. I may have misstated it, but yes. So it's the
Also
sense spaces that are the inner. Yeah.
Yes, because sense spaces. Without sense spaces, there's no seeing, there's no hearing, there's no experiencing, and they're the rupas that are very close.
Right. Yes. Okay. I think that, yeah, thank you. That helps. And what the message John, I think, was conveying was that how can we expect to know, other than sort of theoretically and by talking about it at this point, what that akusala citta actually is. Is that right?
Yes, as you say, I think that usually it's the lobha or the dosa or the kindness that appears rather than the citta itself. But the citta is there as the chief and experiencing. Yes.
We couldn't. I was also making the point that after seeing, there's in the jittas that follow the mind door, for example, jittas that follow after a moment of seeing consciousness, there is attachment already.
Right. Yes.
But that is unknown. That attachment, that akusala, is unknown because it's just subtle and it's normal. It's the norm for us. So
yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the grosser attachment that we don't know it as a reality, but can sometimes be cognizant that it's there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So any because it's clear and it's pure, and it is the chief in experiencing the object, no matter it's known or not known. Usually it's not known, but it is always the leader in experiencing the object, and it's always conditioned by the cetasikas arising.
Yes.
And
yes,
the moment of seeing, there are just 7 cetasikas, the other cetasikas don't arise. Different moments, different cetasikas arise.
Right.
And when they arrive, they perform their functions and condition the citta. But the citta itself, by nature, is always pure and always the leader in experiencing.
Yes. It's pure unless it's tainted by akusala.
Yes.
Right? And that akusala would arise in the jhana process.
Yes, must do.
Before hearing the teachings of the Buddha, what do you think about inner and outer? What's inner and what is outer?
Before hearing the teachings of the Buddha?
Yes, yes.
I think of it as space, inside or outside.
Only that. But it's something like, right? But not Paramatma, not the absolute truth, not that which arises conditioned to be such and such different ones. That's why when we talk about what we think about people and things before hearing the teachings of the Buddha, there is no understanding of no self, no one at all. But when we learn to understand what Buddha taught about reality right now, they are citta, cetasika, and rupa. So we know what we take for outer and inner must be only the absolute reality, not the same idea as things outside and inside. Is that right?
Right.
So not everything comes to the absolute truth, not self. The citta, cetasika, and rupa. Can the rupa be inner? Not innermost, but just the inner.
Some rupas can. The sense bases can.
What is the reason or why? It is inner.
Well, I'm thinking it's inner because it's essential. If there's no sense base, there is no citta that will arise to experience the sense object. I mean, I realize there are other things that have to come together as well, but the sense base would seem to be essential. And yeah.
How many rupas are there altogether?
I don't know the number, 20 something, I think, or 32. I'm guessing.
We don't mind about number now, but
No,
what
there are a lot.
rupa is inner and what rupa cannot be inner. It has to be outer. So the meaning of the inner and outer must be the reality which can be inner rupa and outer rupa. Now we are talking about just rupa first. So from now, at this very moment, we can understand what is inner and outer rupa, so that we can understand realities as not sound. They are real. And the reason why it's inner and the reason why it's not inner is there. So how many rupa are inner? How many rupas are the inner rupa? See?
I'll say five, but I don't really know.
There are 5 rupas: the eye sense, the eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, and body base are the inner. Because can the citta, which experience the visible object now without the eye base?
No.
See, so among all rupas, only these 5 is the inner at moment of citta experiences an object, which is through the sense door. Only 5 sense door objects.
Yes.
So that's why it's inner. Without it, it's impossible for that citta to arise at all. It's the same as ayatana. How many ayatanas are there?
I don't think I know the answer to that, other than what I think about is that for instance, for seeing, there needs to be a visible object, the sense door, the eye base, and seeing. So seeing can only occur if those 3 come together.
So when we talk about the inner and outer, now we just talk about the rupa first. What are the inner rupa and what are the outer rupas? So at moment of seeing, is there the inner and the outer rupa?
Yes.
What is
Visible
the inner?
object.
Is
Visible
the
object.
outer?
The outer rupa would be visible object. The inner rupa would be the eye sense.
Can the visible object be the inner?
No.
See, that's why we understand the word of the Buddha, that it shows or indicates the truth of it as is that which has nothing to do with the seeing. It's only the object which seeing sees, but to be conditioned for seeing, it needs eye base. So the eye base must be there as ayatana, which is inner, and the visible object is outer as object. See, that's why we have to study from the very beginning about citta, cetasika, and rupa, so that there can be a little more understanding about non-self, little by little, until there has no doubt about realities right now. Even there is a reality right now, it's not known as it is. That's why we need to study or to consider carefully of each word as it is, as not self at all. Otherwise, when we just superficially reading or thinking, not considered carefully, how can the very, very subtle reality as no self at all appear? Because it's I who study, and it's I who think about that. But what about the truth of not understanding the nature of that which experience and that which cannot experience yet? So it has to begin from not just to be ignorant about the reality, which is that which is seen or experienced, and without that which experience, nothing can appear at all. In order to understand that no self, little by little, from the beginning. So the studying of the teachings with the understanding of no self will get firmer and firmer until it is the pariyatti satya of the Ariya Satya, the Four Noble Truths.
Right. It's interesting because when we started talking about the inner and outer realities, I guess it's just a week ago, I was still, it seemed like, at that point, it just seemed like labels to me, and it wasn't clear at all why something would be inner and why outer. But the more we've talked about it and listened to you, Ajahn, the more depth there comes, the more depth to it. It's not just sort of a list, or it's not just sort of having from memory pulled out, the five sense bases. It's understanding now more why there are inner and there are outer. So it really does help to talk about this and consider it.
Otherwise, we just talk about the story of realities, but not thinking about that it's here and now. No matter we are talking about, even the inner and the outer, it's now, at moment of seeing, at moment of hearing, and so on. To begin to have the direct awareness of a reality unexpectedly, because of the nature of anothernness is there. Every moment arises to be known or not to be known. Not having heard the teachings of the Buddha, all cannot be known. But after hearing the teaching, it's now, every moment and everything. It depends on whether it is the object of ignorance or the object of understanding, as it is, as not self. This is the best thing in life, to understand the truth, the absolute truth of no one there at all, no one here and now, or anything cannot be taken for something permanent, because as soon as it appears, it's gone. But sanya, the wrong sanya, just remember that it's there. I still like that which is normal. It's not seen, but the memory take it for something permanent, which is wrong. In order to let go the idea of self, little by little, there must be the understanding of just normal, only at moment when it appears. Everything. So short. But the idea of self is so very strong, not letting go what memory sanya remembers as something until hearing. And panya, only panya can know whether how much understanding of what is appearing now, and understanding the difference between the intellectual knowledge or understanding and the direct awareness of our reality by conditions. If it's not by condition, it's wrong again. The idea of self is there, trying so hard to have it. But what it's happened by wanting or wishing is not right awareness at all. It is not awareness. But when the understanding is not enough, one takes it for awareness. For example, right now, there is hardness. Touch is there, touching, experiencing the hardness. No understanding of it as nothing, just appear and then gone. But when there is the understanding of that which appears, no attention to other object, which is there as well, like now, seeing, hearing, seems together all the time. But at moment of having understanding of it as just that, only at moment of touching, and it's hard, only hardness. How can it be something? Just bring about the understanding of non-self, little by little. It takes quite a long time, and Satya Barami is there to understand how much understanding is of what appears now. No one can tell the others at all. It has to be oneself.
It seems to become clear how much of what we experience of our lives emanates from self, like self is the center. So it's very hard to, it's very difficult, and I can see how it takes such a long time to let go of that.
So one begins to understand the virtues, the great virtues of the Buddha. See, more respect and more sattva to the person who developed parami so much to be Samma Sambuddho and can help the others to understand from his enlightenment with the many words of truth for 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any outer and inner reality right now? See, not known
Yes.
before until hearing the teachings.
Alberto, did you want to bring up any of the questions our friend was asking on this subject? I think he asked you to ask 1 or 2 points.
Okay. Hello, everybody. The question was about the varas, the different varas in a viti process. The Tadalambana vara, the Javana vara, and the Uttabana vara, and the Mogha vara. I don't remember hearing you talking much about this. I've only read in surveys of Untitled.Dhamma, which is explained very well there. But maybe if Ajahn wants to talk about, explain a bit about it, would be better, understand it better for all of us. Thank you, Ajahn. Because of the duration of the process of chitta it's not always the 14 moments of chitta plus the 3 bhavanga chitta, which makes the duration of rupa through the sense door. Sometimes it can last less than that, and so as Sarah also was saying, it's all by conditions. But it's useful to talk about about even this very fine details, because it shows the unatterness of realities, and how they can they're different all the time, and they're never the same twice, even in this aspect of the process of chittas and the ayatanas, and also understanding the meaning of ayatanas when reality is ayatana, and when the eye is ayatana, and maybe the ear is not ayatana, but it's still vatu, and it's still the pasada rupa, where realities that were sound impinging. I don't know. I think it would be good if Ajahn talks more about this aspect of the process of chittas, and why sometimes it lasts longer, and sometimes it's shorter than 14 moments of chitta.
Would you like to talk about the inner and outer, and what is longer and what is shorter?
Yeah, I think better finish about the inner and outer. Yes. Yeah.
Because Lucas,
yes, I think maybe. Yeah,
Lucas
maybe
sent you
there's
a
some.
message. Yes, Lucas asked you to bring up his questions on inner and outer. I thought that was what you were going to.
Yeah. I think there is some. The two, they're both about chitta and chittasikas, and what is ayatana, and what is and they're both now, they're both happening now. So.
And I just explained to others when you were talking about the different viti vara, the different processes of chittas, you were asking about why sometimes, for example, in an idle process, it stops at the end of the kusala or akusala chittas, at the end of the javana chittas. Sometimes even before that, at the end of the Votapana chitta, not even any kusala or akusala chittas following. And sometimes after the kusala or akusala chittas, there are tadaramana chittas. So the process can be shorter or longer, depending on whether the object is experienced, whether it's a clear object. And this will often be determined by when the visible object, for example, arose, and how much longer it has before it falls away, as to how many chittas can experience it. But whether there are many chittas experiencing it or just a few, still each chitta is the innermost one, and the chitta seekers arising with it are conditioning it, not the innermost. So no matter whether any kusala or akusala chittas arise, still the chitta is the innermost.
Yeah,
but I think
right.
the main reason that sometimes the process finishes before the kusala or akusala chittas is because the visible object only has a few moments left. So it's already fallen away, so the other chittas cannot arise to experience it.
Yeah.
And I think you were also asking, you wanted Ajahn to say what the meaning of vara is that right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes like in survey, it refers to, in this context, Javana vara, sometimes Votapana vara, Tadaramana vara, depending on when the process finishes. So, and sometimes, like the other day, she mentioned the vara viti. So what the meaning of vara is, I think, was your question too.
Is this as much as we can understand? Or can we understand more?
Maybe it's too much.
Because you see now what process is there. Is there Bhavanga in between each process? Unknown. As it does not appear, can there be any understanding of it? So only Panya is like the light which begin to shine whatever is there, little by little, from 1 to 2, little by little. Like if there is no Lopa Cetasika, no experience, no understanding of Lopa, only when it's there and having heard about it so much with the idea of no self, with the understanding how many characteristics of the way it appears is so much different. That's why that level of Panya can bring about the understanding of whatever is there as it is, but it has to be object and it has to be there. So it's not a matter of understanding the difference between different vara. From the teachings, we understand that they are all anatta and it cannot be known. Because even now, how many varas to know that there is this and that all around? How many varas? And which is which vara? Impossible.
Impossible.
So when we are thinking about vara, where is it? What is it? When is it? See? And is it now? And how can it be known? See? While the other reality appears, and we try to know that which does not appear, it's impossible. So the best thing is to understand what appears now, little by little. Even it's not direct awareness yet, but it will condition the understanding of that which appears with direct awareness by conditions, which is the intellectual understanding firm enough to know what is the best thing in a moment, from hearing and understanding intellectually to be object of direct awareness by conditions, because it's the understanding which begins to know that they are different, not twice again, only one in samsara, so we don't mind at all. Which one is the object now? That which can be known, little by little. So when we talk about anything, it's here and it's there when it's there only. For example, how can there be the understanding that the moment of seeing, the seeing citta, doesn't have lopa and ignorance with it? See, if Buddha didn't tell us about the each cetasika at each moment of citta, quite very various degree. So what appears now is the object of direct awareness, or is it now? Panya knows. When it's not panya, it cannot be known. About moment of direct awareness and moment of no direct awareness yet. Even there is touching, seeing, and it's there all the time. So there can be the understanding of parami, through eons and eons, the accumulation of ignorance. How can it be eliminated or eradicate at once? And you can do anything, but all the sankhara khanda are working, performing the functions, developing understanding of each word, each truth, each reality. This is the only way to have less attachment and clinging to the idea of self, to understand how subtle reality is beyond anyone can do anything, because actually there is no one, only right understanding and wrong understanding. But we can talk about what Buddha taught about realities in different ways to condition the moment of understanding little by little until it becomes the direct understanding with direct awareness, not just awareness without understanding. Without understanding the nature of realities from considering and having more understanding, it's impossible to have the direct awareness arise with the understanding. And how come the understanding with right awareness, sati and sampajanya, must be from intellectual understanding, the teachings of the Buddha, of realities right now, so it can condition movement of direct awareness of one reality at a time, with a little more understanding of no self there.
Anne Lee, I don't know if you can hear me. I can see your name there. At the end of the session last Sunday, you were asking about time and about the fact that one rupa lasts as long as 17 cheetahs. I don't know if we just discussed it very briefly. I don't know if you would like to bring it up again to discuss in a bit more detail, and for Ajahn to give her comments as well.
Hi everyone. Yes, thank you very much, Sarah. Yes, my original question was actually, yeah. After our discussions, I thought that we all agree that the time is just a concept. Yes, it's not a reality. So I accept that point. But yes, anyway, for me, for example, it's the same. For example, at first because at first I thought time is something special. Something is more special than other kinds of phenomena, tangible objects, for example. But maybe now I feel that maybe it's the same. For example, my son, a Dhamma friend, said to me that time is not real. Nothing is time. So now I tend to think that yes, okay, of course it is a concept, so it's not real, but it's also if we say that for example our heart is not real, so it's the same. That time is not real. Yes, but anyway, it still plays some parts in the daily life, and in the conventional term, we still need time to express and to connect many and to connect to connect the terms such as rupa and nama, for example, in the sentence that rupa lasts 17 times longer than nama. So anyway, so just after our discussions and answers, I currently I think that just leave it. So time is nothing special. Sometimes I still feel that it is special, but yes, maybe now it's just like, you know, lung or heart or any organs or a breath, tangible or not. Yeah, maybe it's just the same. I'm sorry. Sometimes I don't understand myself too.
So you said time is not real. What do we mean when we say time is not real? Why is it not real?
It's because it's not any of the ultimate realities. It does not rise and fall, for example, and we cannot it cannot be perceived through any door, like any sense door or any except for the mind door.
It cannot be directly experienced.
Yes.
It has no characteristic to be directly known.
Yes.
So sometimes the word real, has many different meanings. So in the Dhamma context, it has this particular meaning that something is real if it has a characteristic that can be directly experienced.
Yes.
But as you say, it's necessary to have the concept of time in order to live in the world. So we need to talk about the past and the future, yesterday and tomorrow.
Yes.
And the passing of time and so forth, morning and afternoon and evening, nighttime. But that doesn't make it something that has a characteristic that can be directly experienced.
Yes, I agree. And actually, can I raise another question that actually I would like to ask because in one of the discussions, online discussion on the Facebook, someone asked me, but I cannot answer. That's when we talk about sense. We have, for example, eye sense or ear sense or something that my understanding is those sense are rupa and those rupas are conditioned by karma. So from the moment of birth, the karma conditions those sense, those rupa sense to arise, and it rise and fall all the time until we are dead. Just for example, somebody that not born with a weaker karma, like without there's three hetu and they only have two hetu, for example, they lack of one hetu, then they can be born without some sense, for example, without ear sense or without eye sense. But how about some people that, for example, even they have eye sense but or ear sense, but temporarily they just lose the ability to see, or lose the ability to hear, just temporarily. After some time, maybe they can see back or they can hear back. So the question is, the people ask me whether or not some sense can be closed or can be open. I guess they cannot be closed or they cannot be open, but then I cannot explain why. Maybe because, for example, if the sense itself, the eye sense itself does not arise, then, for example, of course, that person cannot see, but he or she cannot see for the whole life. Once the karma was strong enough to condition the rising of eye sense, so those eye sense must be arise all the time, right? So how can sometimes some people just temporarily lose the ability to see, but then that after some time that ability come back? So what happened with those sense? Can it be still arise but did not function, for example, and then people say that the eye sense or the ear sense or tongue are closed, or body sense, for example, sometimes we cannot feel in a special area of our body, cannot feel, but then the sense come back. Yes, so the question is, and there's any things calling the opening or the closing of the sense?
You brought up a lot of different points, Anne. A lot, as Ajahn said, one word at a time, otherwise we get confused with all the different points. So
yes, so the point I want to ask, is there any opening or closing of such rupa, sensing rupa?
But there are many different issues being mixed up. So in terms of, like, at the moment now, seeing, at the moment of seeing, there's no hearing, there's no smelling, there's no tasting, there's no touching. So it's like the other doorways are closed because there is only the eye door, there's only the moment of seeing now. But that doesn't mean that karma isn't producing ear sense and nose sense at each moment. It just means when it talks about, like in the sutta, about the different molehills and just one opening, it just means that at the moment of seeing, there's no hearing at that moment. So it's a different point, a different issue.
To that point, maybe I disagree. I mean, yes, of course, at one time when we see, we cannot hear. But then it's wrong to say that, for example, when we see the ear sense are closed, it's still open, but there's no impingement because the karma did not condition that impingement. So they are still opening all the time. Just as only one sense can be impinged at any single moment, but they are opening all the time. That's what I think.
So during this life, because we're not born with, those who are born with no roots may be blind or deaf from birth, not two roots, but no roots, may be blind or deaf from birth. And that means during that life, no conditions for eye sense or ear sense, whatever it is, to arise. So there cannot possibly be any seeing or hearing during that life because they're birth or deaf completely from the start. It's different from, for example, if someone has a cataract or is mostly blind, there's still eye sense and there's still seeing, but it may be, what is seen may be dark. So that's a different situation. But right now for us, ear sense, eye sense being conditioned all the time by karma, but it depends on whether a visible object has impinged on that eye sense and whether, conditioned by karma, seeing arises to see the visible object. And the moment that seeing sees the visible object, the other doorways, the other objects cannot appear because there can only be the experience of one object through one doorway at a time. So if you want, you can stay there closed. All it means is that there can only be one experience of one reality through one doorway at a time. That's all. At a moment of hearing, there cannot be seeing, so it's like the eye door is closed, because even though there is eye sense, there is no sense being conditioned to arise. Object has impinged, the sound has impinged on the ear sense, and there are conditions for hearing to hear the sound.
Okay, so can we...
In terms of senses being open or closed, that's a conventional and conceptual notion. So in Dhamma terms, it's just a question of whether the particular rupa is arising and falling away, conditioned by karma, and whether, as Sarah said, there's some impingement on that sense space.
Yes.
And no one can close any doorway. It just depends on conditions, what object impinges and what chitta arises at any moment, that's all. So it's not a matter of anyone doing anything or closing any doorway when there are conditions for hearing to arise, like now, no conditions for tasting or touching at that very moment. That's all that is meant.
There's also the consideration that if there is not the karma to support the experiencing of a particular sensed or object, then the sense space cannot arise at that moment to allow that experience. So past karma does come into it. When it's said the sense bases are arising all the time throughout life, that is generally correct, but there needs to be the supportive karma to experience particular objects also. And if that karma is not there and there are not the supporting conditions, then it won't.
And when there can be situations where there's impinging, but not necessarily the experiencing of the object, right?
It can arise does arise regardless of whether there's any seeing, and visible object may impinge, but there may not be any conditions for seeing that visible object. So that's what was meant when we were talking before about the coming together, which Anne mentioned, of the realities. There has to be the coming together of the inner and outer ayatanas, the seeing, the visible object which arose previously, the eye sense which arose previously. There has to be the coming together of all those realities in order for that seeing to see that visible object. And at that moment, we can, like Jonathan said, conventionally say that doorway is open. It just means there are conditions for seeing at that very moment. Ajahn, would you like to add anything to Anli's comments about time or this point?
We think about many, many moments. What about just one moment? And for the eye base, can anyone make it arise? Or can anyone make eye base?
No, no one can control the arising or the falling of any sense.
So how can it arise?
It arises by its own conditions. If there are conditions, for example, by karma or by temperature or something, then it arises.
So what appears has to arise by many, many, many conditions. How can we know? As much as we can know is that no one can make it arise, because actually there's no one at all. But it's there by what? What conditions it? Without condition, there cannot be eye base or anything at all. But when something is there, it's conditioned by different conditions. For seeing is different from hearing. So at the moment of seeing, there's no idea about how come to see such and such object. See, by conditions, what is there? Why not the other object? See, everyone would like to experience only pleasant objects, but it's not always pleasant object which is experienced in a day in one's life. So all depends on conditions to understand that actually there's no I, no self at all. From understanding little by little, it can be conditioned to letting go the idea of self little by little. But when we think without in our own way, without understanding the conditions, can that be true? Impossible. That's why hearing the teachings of the Buddha and carefully consider brings about the understanding of no self. And this is the absolute truth. Is there any self, anyone at all? They are only different realities, unknown, and take it for self or something from life to life. So very strongly, never letting go at all. But to be satya, honest, truthful to the truth, can anyone be self because it's conditioned to arise and false away? Never twice at all. Forever. No return. So what is clinging? What is the use of clinging to that when it's all gone? But there is the idea of self all the time because of ignorance, not understanding, and try to understand by one's own thinking about that. But no understanding because panya is not there, not enough, because the self is thinking about the no self. But when there is the understanding of that such reality as it is, as much as there can be the understanding of that level, it begins to develop the idea of no self. And to understand the truth is the truth. Is that better than trying to understand the lifespan of Rupa and the Bhavankas in between, how many hundred and thousand vara of seeing and thinking, see? But no understanding of the characteristic which appears as it is without considering and understanding at all. So it's still something and I all the time. And life is so short. And the ignorance and attachment is accumulated so long time ago. So the best thing in life is to understand the reality which appears as it is, not just to take it for something permanent, which is wrong. So just thinking about the lifespan of the Rupa and the Chitta, not experiencing it, impossible to experience that. What is the use? But to understand that it falls away all the time. But before it falls away, it's conditioned to arise and appear and disappear. No more, see, only the idea and thinking and clinging to everything and something all the time, from life to life. So if one cannot be able to understand, like Buddha, the lifespan of Rupa and the Chitta, just learn to know that nothing is permanent. And what it seems like very stable or permanent is very, very short moment, just appear and disappear at once, never to return to be known as not self. So we don't mind what Rupa are there now. So many, the tree and everything, but they are the absolute truth, that which can be seen. Before that which can be seen is known as that which only can be seen. No one in there. It takes quite a long time. So today, many things appear as something all day. So one knows that it needs more and more understanding of the words of the Buddha about the truth of everything when it appears, like now. Seeing appears, hearing is there. So without the understanding, the nature of seeing and hearing as no one, no self, that which experiences only, it doesn't bring any further understanding of no self. Because just thinking in terms of words and thought, but not the reality which appears. Is there any moment you think of the Buddha in a day, when there's no listening to the teachings, no discussing at all. And in a day, just think about many things, not the reality which appears. So it takes quite a long, long time, and has to be understood that understanding has to develop from the first human very low level to very high level, from considering the truth which appears little by little, from understanding, from hearing, from so many things conditioned. Even just one word is so deep, and so many layers of understanding. For example, attachment. See, attachment to things is not as much as attachment to the idea of me or self or someone or something. We can give things away, but can you give the wrong understanding away? Not you at all, but only right understanding which begins to understand the truth little by little by conditions. So one does not worry about that because it's beyond expectation. It's beyond any other way, but it has to be the understanding only from hearing the truth of it that Buddha shares us from his words for 45 years. So we can talk about just a reality to understand better and better. This is the only way to eliminate the idea of self. Like now, who knows? It's the way to have less attachment when there is understanding of the characteristic of anything as no self, no thing in it. That which is seen is only a reality which is there together with hardness and softness and the four primary rupas. Who can do? Who can make anything arise? Impossible, because they are conditioned realities by many, many conditions.
Yes, thank you, Ajahn.
Ajahn Ka, I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
It's from one of the suttas I was reading this morning, and it said how we take everything for mine, and as in the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Well, intellectually, I can understand the eye. We see, we hear, but the mind is always a little vague for me. Can you explain a bit more about the mind?
Okay.
Please?
Shall we begin with what is the mind? If you understand the seeing and the hearing, but you don't understand the mind, so what is the mind?
Well, I think of it.
Okay, please.
Well, I think of it as thinking, but you know, I think it's more.
And what about the citta before seeing, which does not think, and the citta which follows the seeing, which does not think? Is that citta there before seeing and after seeing? Is that the mind or what?
Well, that's what I'm unsure about. It's a little vague for me as to what the mind actually is.
So when we have the idea or understanding that what we take for mind is that which can experience an object, because we are not used to the word experience at all. because no idea of that is now. Seeing is that which arises by conditions and it experiences the visible object. So we take it as seeing, but actually it's a reality which can experience seeing only. See, but we know the word seeing, but we don't understand the truth of it, the nature of it. So each reality has its own characteristic and its nature. So what we take from mind is not seeing, or is it seeing, or what is it? See, no understanding. But when we think about the nature of reality, is that no matter what is there, its nature is that which experiences, and the other nature is that which cannot experience. We begin to forget about the word mind, but we understand the moment of seeing, that it's that which experiences visible object. We don't call it visible object. It's the object of seeing, or when there is seeing, it has to be a reality which is seen, or that which is seen, no matter what at all. So the experiences is there from birth. When there is no experiencing arise, we cannot call birth. But when it's there, we call it birth, as human being, fish, snakes, whatever, of the reality which arises to experience. No matter we use the word mind or see or think or what, it's the reality which experiences an object. It arises, and it arises to experience only. And it has conditions for its arising. It doesn't mean that it want to, it try to, but there are conditions to condition its arising, just to see, just to hear, just to experience. So no matter in what world, the human being world, a deva or animal or whatever, the experiencing is the experiencing. No matter you call it what, no matter you say that it's bird or snake or human being. So they are only that which experiences. So when we talk about the eye door, ear door, and then we have mind door, when it's not that which sees, hears, smells, touch, and taste, see, only that. We can use very simple word without that which have so many, many words without the understanding of reality at all. But we are talking about the realities in life. When we use the word life, we don't talk about that which cannot experience. But the moment of experiencing anything, we don't know. But there must be the reality which is Jivitindriya, which makes or condition that to be living thing, living reality. See, so there are so many things unknown until the words of the Buddha is there to open up the truth of whatever appearing now. See, so when we talk about mind, it's so vague, we don't know what we mean. But when we talk about the reality which experiences an object, it's there now, hearing. The sound is not a hearing. The sound cannot hear, but that which arises to hear the sound is real because it's now, at this moment, unknown, that it's a reality, no one there at all. So that is the meaning of what we say, the absolute truth, the absolute reality of reality itself. Thinking is real, so it's a reality which does not see, does not hear. So every word in life that we use from birth, which we don't know what is it. So we talk and we use the different words, but don't know the truth of anything we are talking about, like mind. But the reality of whatever is there must be different, like one can experience. It's not the mind, it's not the seeing, it's not the thinking, it's not the hearing. And that which cannot see, cannot experience anything at all. Try to understand whether this is true or not just to believe, but it's there to be proven. like seeing right now. It's not that which is seen. The seeing itself does not appear yet, but it's there. So in a day from birth to death, that which experiences arise to perform its function, like seeing or hearing, thinking, and so on, and then no more at all. Just only in a very, very short moment. Cannot be known. Just one moment of experiencing, because the other kind of experiencing follow it from moment to moment, or unknown, that they are different. The moment of birth is not the moment of Pavanka, and each moment of Pavanka is not twice, just once, only one at a time, never to return. And at moment of seeing, only seeing appear. The citta before seeing does not appear. The citta which follows it does not appear. If we try to experience, is it possible?
Not possible.
See, and what about the mind? It's only the experiencing, the citta and cetasika arising, performing the function as the self at all. It's no one. There is no one to perform the function of citta and cetasikas. They are citta and they are cetasikas.
And Zita, you'll find that mind is just a translation of a term, probably mano. It gets translated as mind, but it means, mano means citta, so it means any citta. Like when we were talking about citta as the innermost Dhamma, the innermost ayatanas, this is manayatana. So it may get translated as mind or something like this, but it just means any citta at all.
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn.
Ajahn, may I ask a question?
Please, Sunmesh.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Ajahn, a little while ago, you were talking about the pervasiveness of self in all that we think about. And you said that the self thinks about no self. So, for example, when we're having this discussion and no self is mentioned, without understanding, there will be thinking about anatta, but it is the self that thinks about it. And I was wondering also, when you say about how important it is not to mind whether or not there is understanding, to accept the unexpectedness of the arising of understanding, whether that is possible for the self that thinks, or the thinking that it always includes the idea of self. Is it impossible to think like that? If the idea of self is there, can it think about, oh, never mind about how long this takes, or understanding will arise unexpectedly, like explore what the real meaning of anatta means. Is it at all possible for the way we think before direct understanding to consider that? Can we consider the concept of anatta in any other way than with wrong view? I think that's the essence of what I'm asking you.
What is seen now, please? What is seen now?
People and things.
Do you expect to see them?
Yes, in the absence of understanding.
Do you know about the thinking which thinks? Can you make it arise? Is there any choice to have such thinking?
No.
So
No.
it means that anatta, no one there, by conditions. You cannot think about that which you haven't seen before, right? But once it's seen, it can be conditioned for thinking about that which Sanya remembers. Everything can be understood as no self by from understanding that, because it's only that, like thinking, what is there or what are there at moment of thinking. So many things are known, like vitaka cetasika. It's not phassa cetasika. Unexpectedly, what would you think next? By conditions only. Even you try so hard to have that thought, but it's impossible to have it, because at that moment there is something that you think about immediately instead of thinking about that. See?
Well, that makes sense, Ajahn. It is when you talk about those steps, then logically it suggests no self, that there is no self there is no self that is doing any of this. But that is a very intellectual idea, or it's an idea that I suppose someone could have without ever having heard the Dhamma. So what is it that, I suppose, also going to that idea of considering, when you talk about how important it is to considering, does that imply a different way of thinking about?
Okay, there is seeing right now. What do you think about that?
Well, there is what habitually I would think about, people and things, but there is something else that I consider as well, at the level of thinking, because of much discussion and reading in that over the years. So it's like there is some doubt about the conventional reality. So it seems as if it's people and things, but there's something else that something else says, well, not necessarily, but that's not part of my experience at this moment. I can consider it as a possibility, but I can't talk about it directly.
But once you heard about no self, no one, and consider it carefully, is it true? This is the beginning of to know how little one understands that the truth of that. At moment of seeing, is it you? Where is you? Seeing sees. See, can you find the you? It's down deeply rooted in the mind. To take it for something, when nothing arises, there's no clinging or thinking about it or taking it for something. But whenever anything arises, what is that? Something is that. See, in the mind or thought, what is that? What is something? See, it's there automatically, naturally, by conditions. So Buddha taught in details about each degree of akusala or wrong understanding. For example, when there's no understanding of seeing, it's that which has to arise by conditions and falls away because at moment of hearing it's not there. So it's gone completely, absolutely, forever. And so it's gone, but you still think of that which is seen and no understanding of the reality which sees. See, that's the moment of taking that for self or the object as something all the time until the enlightenment of the Buddha is there. And he taught us about what he had enlightened. So we begin to have the understanding, the truth of whatever is there appearing to be known. But with ignorance, not understanding that it's conditioned to arise and just to perform its function like seeing or hearing in just a moment. Because at moment of thinking about shape and form, it's not seeing. Different moment, far apart, many jittas in between. See? So very rapidly. That's why we learn to understand the very, very great virtue of the Buddha, to experience that directly with highly understanding, to let it go all the akusala, hatred, attachment, for example. See, so many things in the day undo until the moment of hearing, listening, thinking carefully about the truth of the word which is there now at any moment, every moment in life. That is the beginning of understanding the truth among the ignorance and attachment and akusala. That's why we learn to understand, or panya develops among all those akusala, ignorance, all the time. That's why it's not strong enough to let go the idea of self because it's so very deeply rooted. Moha, lopa, tosa, as the roots of all akusala, see, are there, unknown. Now there is ignorance as long as no understanding of the characteristic of that which is now appearing. But from hearing, there is the beginning of thinking, considering carefully what is true and what is not true. And it has to develop more and more and more and more until the other higher level of understanding is there by conditions from understanding the truth of what is there, from hearing and thinking, considering carefully, wisely. Otherwise, it cannot arise again. So the truth is that whether there is someone, something, or self, now, can anyone find the self? When it's not real, when it's not true at all. Only seeing is true.
Yes.
That's why the word of Buddha is vaca satya. Vaca is word, and satya is the truth, words of the truth of everything which is there by conditions. No one can make it because actually they are only different realities, thinking, experiences, object, which is the thought, and seeing experiences the visible object, and hearing experiences sound, only in a moment and then gone completely, never to return at all. So ignorance and attachment cling to that as permanent. It's there. It's still there, like now. See, what appears, arises and falls away in split seconds, unknown. As long as that impinge on the eyes, it's there, that it's real. But after that, no more. And that is a highly developed panya, which can directly experience the arising and falling away of a reality. I mean, a kind animitta of reality, not just only one unit of it. How many trees are there and how many things around? See, if there's no experiencing, that cannot be known. But it cannot be known as it is, because the rapidity of the arising and falling away of realities. What arises falls away in split seconds. Understanding this will gradually eliminate the very strong attachment to the idea of self. But it's still very strong because it's there from years and years ago up until now. So we understand the meaning of parami, the word parami. See, without parami, it's impossible to understand that which is hidden all the time. All realities do not appear, even they arise, they do not appear like viriya. See, viriya does not arise with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the other ahetuka, citta without hetu. But the other moments, it's there. Who knows when it does not appear? But when it appears, the ignorance, not understanding that it's only a reality conditioned to arise and perform its function, it's I who try. See, but it's not you or anyone. If that reality does not arise, it's not there. So the development of understanding is this moment of understanding, little by little, and this is the only way to understand better and better until it conditions direct awareness by conditions, unexpectedly. And it shows the unnothingness of each moment when there is right understanding, that no expectation at all. Everything is an expectation, only by conditions.
And as Ajahn said a minute ago, Maeve, it's the understanding of realities as they are that gradually eradicates the idea of a self. But we should also keep in mind that the eradication of the idea of a self, which of course does not happen until stream entry, does not mean that the person ceases to have the idea of people and things, because they are concepts of the conventional world that are necessary to have. Otherwise, one couldn't live in the world, because unless one thought about the words spoken, one wouldn't be able to understand the conversation or recognize the person who was speaking. So we need to keep in mind the distinction between the wrong idea of a self and the concept of people and things and conventional objects, because the concepts that form about people and things are not necessarily indicative of an idea of self.
Yes, I actually, Jonathan, how does that relate to the words that we read the Buddha uttered upon enlightenment, where he said something to the effect, "Oh, house builder, you are seeing. The ridge pole is shattered." You know, that kind of revelatory statement. It seems to imply that that edifice of a world that is constructed through the ideas of self, of people and things, is actually shattered. how do you understand that in relation to, well, what we're talking about in terms of the understanding of no self, but also living in the world of the conventional world?
Well, as I said, the wrong idea of self is a particular unwholesome mental factor that can only be eradicated by the development of understanding that sees individual conditioned dhammas as they truly are, as anicca, dukkha, and anatta, beyond control. But the concept of say, a room and a table and a chair does not depend on or necessarily imply wrong idea of existence and permanent entity and that sort of thing. They are different ideas, different notions. One involves a view as to the way things are in truth and reality, and the other is a convenient way of, just like we use language to convey meaning or to give labels to things, that is just a matter of convenience and common usage. But that's why the Buddha could speak to people and communicate and for the enlightened being actually starting from the Sotapanna, because the Sotapanna has eradicated all wrong view of self, but still can live a normal life and family life also, as we know. So people and things, ideas of people and things are not, are a convenience, are useful, are necessary, just like the concept of time, which we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you were here at that time. We were talking about time and space and all sorts of abstract terms like convenience or usefulness. All these things are useful, are necessary in order to live in the world, in samsara. And because it's habitual, it doesn't stop when panya sees the reality of the present moment. So it's the deeply held view of what's behind it all that is to be eradicated, not the way the world is perceived in terms of objects, things.
So we might consider that the ridgepole that the Buddha refers to as being shattered is that wrong view.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. The ridgepole, is the thing that, because it's just as the ridgepole is what keeps the house there, so it's the wrong view that keeps us in samsara.
Yes.
Yeah, once the ridgepole has been shattered, there will soon be conditions for no more rebirth. That is the beginning of the ending of life in samsara.
Yes. Thank you, John.
The point you started with, before there is direct understanding of anatta, whether it's always thinking about anatta with wrong view or something like that. But when we start considering that now it's just seeing, and what is seen is actually not people and things, this is not direct understanding, but it is the intellectual right understanding, when it is the understanding that it really is just a visible object that's seen at this moment. So this is the beginning of understanding dhammas as anatta, the opposite of wrong view. And that understanding just has to develop very gradually, beginning with the right considering about different dhammas. So when we talk about how it's seeing which sees now, no Jonathan, no Nina that can see, it's the beginning to consider the reality of seeing, that leader of experiencing what is seen. So even if we don't use the word anatta, it's the beginning of understanding Dhamma as Dhamma, and that is what is meant by understanding seeing as anatta. So gradually, from the hearing and considering, reflecting about those dhammas which experience and those dhammas which don't experience anything, it is the gradual, habitual familiarity with dhammas as anatta. And that's the opposite of the usual wrong view of people and things. So it grows, otherwise there can never be the direct understanding of realities if there hasn't been the hearing and the considering about those dhammas.
Yes. Yes.
We can remember that the Buddha taught understanding of what is appearing at the present moment. That is the crux of his teaching. There's one sutta called the Full Understanding Sutta where he sets out the conditioned dhammas in terms of, I think it's the aggregates, but the emphasis is on understanding what is there in reality. So for some people in, say, other school, not school, some people have the idea that the teaching is about not thinking in a certain way, but that's impossible to achieve, and it misses the point that it's all about understanding what is appearing rather than trying to think differently or not try to think about things that in a certain way. But it's helpful to just be reminded that the reality of the world of conditioned dhammas is that there are only conditioned dhammas. There's nothing else. There's nothing permanent or there's nothing that lies behind those conditioned dhammas. But unless conditioned dhammas are seen as they truly are, that's only a sort of a sketchy outline of things.
Yes, and I suppose that's why Ajahn keeps bringing us back to the present moment. Well, and of course you bring us back to the present moment as well, because it's the only opportunity to do that, or for that to not. No, that's the self that does something, isn't it? It's the only opportunity for understanding to arise about that reality that appears.
Yes, because if one was only told that there was no self, but wasn't told what are the realities that are appearing, it wouldn't be helpful. It would never lead to anything. That
Yes.
all that one knew was no self, the path couldn't be developed. The path can only be developed by understanding what are the realities that are appearing at the present moment.
Hi, John. I think it's a bit like in where, in the desert that they say the hot sun, the hot sand, and we see like a pleasant lake and pleasant landscape. We really think it's there. And maybe when we are told that actually there's only hot sand and hot sun, we can understand it intellectually, but until you actually see the real surrounding, the real elements that make up the illusion of the pleasant place and people and things, you just can imagine what the truth is. And so even if we listen about the truth about the being in the desert, in the hot sand, and there's no really pleasant lake around, we still have the memory of the pleasant lake. But once, I think after the stage of the rising and falling away of conditioned dhammas, then I don't think there will be any more. There will still be the memories of the pleasant lake, but and the water and the rest, but no more the illusion about living in that surrounding anymore.
Thanks, Alberto. I'll let Ajahn speak because I think time's running out for this session.
I think that no one understands just the truth of each word yet. For example, when we talk about the world, is there anyone who understands it, or is everyone? Is there everyone understand it? World, what is it? It seems like there is the understanding of what is the world, but actually, what is it? It indicates that we just talk about everything from birth to death, but no understanding the truth of what we are talking about. For example, the world. It seems like everyone knows the world, what it is, but actually, is there anyone who understands the world? Because everyone thinks that they understand the world. But what is it?
But Ajahn, there can be some intellectual understanding of the world.
Yes, what
Because
is that?
after
What
hearing the
is that?
Dhamma,
What is the understanding of the world?
after hearing the Dhamma, we understand
See,
that what we take,
after hearing, one begins to know what the world is. But before
yes,
that, we talk about the
no,
world a lot. And it seems like everyone knows the world. But what is the world in reality, as it is? See, without the teachings, no one knows the world at all. What is it? What is the world? We use the word many, many times, but what is it in truth? It needs the right understanding of the Buddha's teaching to understand whatever is there. Whatever it is taught by the Buddha about the truth of it. So what is the truth of the world? See, okay, then after hearing the teachings, what is the world?
it is seeing now, hearing now, thinking
Why
now.
is the world? And what's meant
Uh,
by world?
because what we take for the world in the bigger sense is actually one moment of these experiences that is taken for the world. And after hearing, we know that in reality, without these realities which rise and fall away completely, there is no world.
What else is the world?
All conditioned dhammas is the world.
So you mean whatever arises and falls away is the world? Is that
Yes,
right?
that's what. Yes, Ajahn.
So if nothing arises at all, how can there be something or anything or I? But when there is something arises, it's there. As that which arises is the world. So the world, the realities which arise and fall away in split second, continuously, all the time, unknown. So the meaning of the word is that which arises and falls away. Each one, like hardness, is a word. Sight, seeing is the world. That which is seen is a world because it arises. Otherwise, it's not there to be known. So what we know as a world is that which experienced and that which cannot experience. Whatever arises is a world. So that which is not the world is Nibbana only. This is the difference of the four absolute truth. Citta, Cetasika, Rupa, and Nibbana. So in reality, in the absolute truth, the world is whatever is that which is conditioned to arise and falls away. So even what we take for the tree is a world. If there is no arising of the tree at all, and other things, everything does not arise at all, no world. So each of that which arises and falls away is the world. So we know that the world is very short. It is not like the whole big star or whatever it is at all. That is the idea. For example, can the sun be broken up? Can it? In the
Yes.
future? Not now. But
Yes, it can.
that we take for sun must be something there which is taken for the sun. Hardness is there. Heat is there. See? So in truth, only hardness, only heat is reality, is real. The sun, no matter we call it what, whatever is hot, we call it something. But wherever is hard, we call it something. But the absolute truth is only hardness arises and falls away. If it does not arise, nothing at all. Nothing at all. No world at all. So the world composed of many reality which is conditioned to arise and fall away all the time. So we can understand Nibbana as that which has no condition for its arise, because so it does not arise because of no conditions to arise. So now the other world is that big star or whatever we are, like we are in the world, we think of the world. But in fact, in truth, only that which arises is a world. So many worlds, the world of sight, the world of sound, so on. Otherwise, we don't understand what is we take for world, that which is there as something all the time. Altogether becomes a world. So, is there a world now? Is there a world, only a world now?
There's always a world until Parinibbana.
Yes, that's the truth. So we understand what people take for the world and what is the truth of the world. And what is true.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Anumodana. Sawadika. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anumodana.
See you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
for all the good questions too. Much appreciated.
ค่ะสวัสดีทุกคนค่ะ
Sawadika.
สวัสดีค่ะ
ที่การตกลงคุณหมอก็เป็นหมายเลข4353
สมัครได้เลยฮะดีนะ ถ้าเราไม่เชิญเขาก็มาเขาเขียน
แล้วก็